Kathy?
Here.
Nancy?
Here.
Dave? Here. Barbara? Not there. Bill?
Here.
Bill?
Here.
Joe? Here. Mr. Summers? Here. No,
All right.
Mr.
Thank you for that. I appreciate
Yeah.
the respect.
Any motions to amend the agenda?
I move you accept it.
Second. Jim has moved to approve the agenda and Joe has seconded. All in favor? Opposed? So it's unanimous. Okay, on to discussion of the CPM changes. There are MRRA 110% policy. Who's taking the lead on this, Scott? Is it you or is it David?
Well, we've also got Nellie, so I can do it, David can do it.
Go ahead.
I'll do it.
Let's all jump.
At this point.
Let's all jump. Kathy could do it. Yeah, so the existing language in the CPM is really pretty restrictive, and I'm not sure that everyone even understands just how restrictive it actually is. If you look on page 2 of this is agenda topic 3, so that's page 2. The authorization under section 5.33, which is maintenance, repair, and replacement of the CPM, D is authorization, says the CEO, in the absence of the CEO's designee or CFO, are authorized to commit up to 110% of a component's fully funded balance for the current fiscal year in the current annual reserve study. Now, in practice, I don't think anybody has actually followed that, because what it actually means is a component would be like a parking lot at Desert Hills, or it would be a bathroom upgrade at Kanoa Hills or something like that. Yes, ma'am.
The reason they call it component instead of project.
I think because it's an individual component. We've got Bob Browning on the phone, so he might be able to, I think this is just reserve study lingo, but I'm not 100% sure. It's an individual item. Could be a roof, replacing the roof at Desert Hills or something. The problem is sometimes, more often than not, especially with inflation, we've seen bids coming in higher than what the actual component amount would be, for example. And the way it's restricted right now is we would have to come back to the board anytime that cost exceeds 110% of what was actually listed in the annual reserve study. So you can imagine during all of your board meetings every month, we would generally provide you a list of every time we exceeded that. As a result, and the way this has just been handled for quite a few years now, is the board and staff have looked at the reserve study in the aggregate as a combined list of components. For example, this year we have $2.3 million in components that we're going to work on. The way that has been applied in the past is it's been interpreted and defined that all those components combined in an aggregate may not exceed 110% unless we come back to the board for approval. That's the way we've actually applied the policy. It makes more sense. It's more reasonable. It allows the flexibility. If we need to spend a little less on a component over here and a little bit more on a component over here for whatever reason, we can do that without having to come back to the board every time. So again, in practice, this is the way it has been applied, and it really does make sense. It's a lot more comparable to the way we actually manage the operations budget. So what we have recommended, what the FAC recommended yesterday, as a matter of fact, is to change the language to the red line that is before you on page 2. So this is a really simple change. We simply change the sentence to say the CEO, or in the absence of the CEO, we are authorized to commit up to 110% of the fully funded balance of all components combined for the current fiscal year and the current annual reserve study. Board approval is required before committing more than 110%. Again, this is how it's been applied in practice. Our FAC recommended it because it just makes sense. So with that, any questions?
Actually passed unanimously by our committee. We looked at it at the January meeting and then looked at the language at the February meeting. And it was unanimous to approve it. It's just common sense.
I move to approve the language as written. And
It's a work session.
oh, right, we can't. Oh, that's right. It's a work session. Sorry.
It was kind of a big item. We wanted to bring it before you and just make sure we had it ironed out before we get to the meeting next week.
Gonna get rid of
But it will be on the meeting next week.
Yeah.
So I have a question and.
Sure.
Perhaps there's some bit of obviousness that I'm missing. But let's say for the sake of argument that we're talking about a roof on a building. And under our reserve study, the building has a total value of whatever, $2 million. And the roof is going to cost us $200,000. So if it goes up to, I mean, it sounds like if the roof comes in at $1 million or even a million, what pot are you focusing on when you say all components combined? Are you talking about all of GVR's assets throughout its?
This is
15
all
centers?
just MRR. This
Okay.
is all maintenance, repair and replacement. That's it.
Yeah.
Of MRA specifically.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in your example, if you said the roof comes in at 200,
Yeah,
well, you know, it may be scheduled in the reserve study at 150.
Right.
And what we're saying is we want to be able to go ahead as long as all the rooms in all the restrooms and HVAC, as long as we don't spend more than 110% of what we budgeted and planned for in that year.
okay.
I think the other point is if you ever had to implement this provision, which when looking at what we spend on an annual basis, we've not really reached that, the level. But if you did have to reach at 110%, the dollars are there in the MNRR overall funding balance. So it's just would be an acknowledgement that with all the components, something happened where either was inflation or an extraordinary event. But in practicality, we haven't had to use this in the
Right.
last, since I've been here, ever. Right.
All right.
But if we did, the money is in the fund balance.
Right.
But it also brings it into line with what we have said in the operating budget,
Right.
so that they're consistent.
Right. We're basically applying the same thing, except
Right.
the 110%. And again, the 110% is really just existing language, but that was per component. But as Nellie said, that we've not even hit 100%. We've done a lot better, though, that our goal has been to actually spend the money so that we can maintain our facilities.
Yeah.
So we've been doing a lot better. Better at spending money.
Repairing our buildings.
It's going to save us in the long run.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions?
I have a quick one. We have a really big agenda next week. I don't know if you've seen that, but there's a lot of stuff on there. We have a lot of awarding of contracts out of the initiatives funds. We're trying to save your time. If you're all in agreement, we can put something like this on consent. And then you can approve it all in one consent unless there's any reservations and you want us to talk about it again. I'm happy to talk for a couple hours on this.
You'd be doing it alone. All right. Yeah, I guess I wouldn't have any objection if they were put on the
Okay.
agenda.
That's okay.
Great.
We don't have Marge or Barbara here, but I don't think there's.
Anyone can pull it next week too. We'll just put it on there. If for whatever reason you change your mind, it can be pulled.
I do have a quick question.
Sure.
Sure.
You're
Jody?
not talking 110% of the budgeted amount for that fiscal year. You're talking about components, correct?
No, I'm talking about, it is components now, We're talking about combining it into an aggregated combined amount.
That's in the reserve study that could be upgraded for the fiscal year, correct?
It's for the current fiscal year in the
Right.
annual reserve
So we
study.
have an estimate that we're working with, correct?
We have, this year, we do, it's all in the reserve study. So
Okay.
this year, we're looking at about $2.3 million in total. All the
the
components
components.
combined.
Okay.
Yeah,
So basically, you're saying, I use 2.4. 2.4 of 110% is
Right.
2.6440.
sure,
So that's what you're basically saying, the not to exceed
correct,
for all components through the fiscal year.
for that year,
Okay, I follow you. I just
Good.
want to make sure.
sure. Yeah, this isn't easy stuff, so I absolutely. Thank you for asking.
Yeah,
All right, good. So we're on to number 4, discussion on the 2570 policy.
Okay, I'm gonna take the lead on this. I'm gonna refer to page 7, which is the PowerPoint. I also want to acknowledge that we have Browning, representatives on the line. Where did they go?
They're there.
They're there. So Bob Browning is with us and Mike, who actually does our on-site review, and our numbers are with us, and they have, worked with us, at our FAC meeting. If you remember, we had a board work session on the reserve, study in October. And then we had, follow-up meetings at FAC on the topic. But on page 8, I just want to talk about, we're dealing with 2, types of reserves. So on the left-hand side, the part A, reserve, that is completed by Browning. We started with Browning in 2016. And that covers the repair and replacement of existing equipment and facilities. Our CPM basically has specific instructions, whatever Browning determines in its study. Those dollars shall be added to our budget in order for us to maintain our facilities. We did have, from 2016 to 2019, we did have a policy that talked about 85% of fully funded requirement. The board eliminated that exact percentage, but Browning continued to use it throughout 2019 up to 2024, and then it was changed this year. We contribute in our budget, and when we say contribution, that's the amount of dollars that basically comes from our membership fees, $1.3 million this year, and that is increased at about 4.3% versus 6.5% in prior years. The part B, a reserve study, is our pools and spas, and that was created in 2021, particularly after the issue with the East Pool. That study is completed by the staff, and it was originally not included in the 2016 reserve analysis due to costs. Staff basically puts together an estimate that they also had an engineering study, but by a pool company did a review of all of our pools this year. And based on the analysis and the figures, they have put together a report with regard to a reserve study for our pools, and we'll talk about that. In 2025, our budget includes $320,000 for the contribution level. That is a 7% increase each year, and you will understand why it's more of a catch-up because this fund is underfunded for the years of the length of years of our pools. As we look at the FAC recommendations coming in, we are continuing to maintain these two separate reserves. So part A done by Browning, part B done by the staff. We do need to acknowledge that Browning, our CPM requires that we each year acknowledge them as our contractor. And this is the year that they'll be doing what I refer to as the on-site review. So that'll be a separate motion that would be coming in next week. As we look at these recommendations, we're not changing any dollar amount in our budget. There's no fiscal impact. Rather, we're looking at it from a policy standpoint of establishing the ranges of where we want our reserves to be in order that we maintain our buildings as well as our pools. So on the RA of fund, we're going to acknowledge that we're looking at a percent of fully funded at 70%. And we're also looking at having a minimum desired funding level of on or about 25%. And this would be out, these contributions levels would be in our budget. So as you look at the separate recommendations on each pool, we'll come back to the recommendations again at the end. So the inflation factor that's been used prior, as I pointed out, we've been increasing our contribution levels 6.5%. And that basically got us to our 85% of fully funded over a number of years. And it was determined that we did not need to basically commit that level of funding in order to maintain our facilities. And so in 2025, that percentage was reduced to 4.3%. And we're continuing that percentage increase throughout the 30 years. The impact on the contribution reserve, there was no kind of, not minimum level, but no kind of basic level at the bottom threshold side. And so we're looking at the minimum of 20 on or about 25% of the cost of replacement level. On the next slide, you can see the chart. The blue represents what the commitment was when we were looking at moving it to 85%. So you can see that would have pulled additional dollars from our budget. And that dropping it to 70% plus resulting in the 4.3% contribution level each year has a more gradual contribution level going all the way up to reaching our goal in 2048. Contribution level would still continue to increase, but it's more from the investment income at that particular point in time. So this reserve level is sufficient and adequate as you look at the percentage of funding. This is in the Browning report. You'll see at the bottom that on page 3, a more detailed Browning report. It should say 4,
Yeah,
not
that's what
cool. That's a typo.
Yeah.
So you can look at the percentage of funding. We're basically at 60.8%, I believe, right now. And that really varies depending upon what we actually spend each year. So we're really between 60 and 70%. And the Browning report notes that if you're in between up to 70 to 80%, you're really at a strong position as it relates to your funding level in your reserves. With regard to the next slide. So that's the fully funded balance. This shows you the dollar amount. So we were talking earlier about our total dollar amount is $6.8 million in our fund balance. And so our fully funded balance reserve is 11.2. And so we're at 60.5%. So we're heading up towards our 70%, and that's adequately funded. If you're looking at the cost of replacement, we're looking at our goal at or about 25%. Again, the balance, you can see 6.8 million, current replacement cost at 19.6. So we're at 34%. So we are higher than our 25%, but that varies each year. And so as we go into next year, that could drop down to a 25% level. So we're just shooting to be on or about. And so that would basically establish our range. And with this particular funding policy, we believe we'd be adequately funded to maintain our facilities and equipment. The FAC committee also then looked at the pools and said we should also look at the same type of funding scenario. just one last point. This came up to, with regard to our funding experience. So this is the dollar amount that we've actually been expending out of, since 2019. So, from an expenditure level, I'm going to look at 2024. We were to spend 1.7 million. We spent 1.4 million. There's a number of reasons why that can vary depending upon project scheduling, part availability, access to contractors, COVID. So we're at 78%. You can see in the last couple of years that there's been a significant improvement from 2019 to 2022. We're really shooting, as Scott has said, to really to spend up to the dollars that's been identified in the reserve and basically manage those projects. What is important to note is in 2025, it is our highest expenditure level that's recommended, 2.3 million. That is a significant increase over prior years. And so you're going to see a lot of activity. If all of those projects were completed during this year, that's a lot of activity compared to prior years. So that's why the percentages actually may vary from what you start with at the beginning of a budget year to what you end up with, is because these expenses during the year actually can fluctuate. Next slide is our Part B. As we noted on the left-hand side, it was created in 2021. It's completed by the staff. The data on our pool, GVR has 13 pools of varying age, and you'll see this on our next chart. The normal useful life, it's approximately 35 years. That's been reached by 7 of our pools. We're looking at extending the useful life. When we looked at East, I believe East was pushed at about 52 years that pool made it. So we're looking at somewhere between 50 to 67 years on each of our pools, which would require us, as we've done, maintenance of those pools each year to really achieve that useful life. When we look at the actual numbers over the 30 years, it assumes that a pool is replaced every 4 years. The other assumptions are that there's a 6% return on investment fund, and we're using an average rate of 3% inflation. The next slide, you can see the age of the pools with the ones that have already achieved their useful life up to now, so that the ones in the orange are the ones that have used up their useful life, and they're ones that are priority to be replaced, with Casa Paloma being the first ones, and then you can see them running through. The costs that are reflected there have been inflated already up to 2025 costs. So it does point out that our pools are aging, and we need to really look at the adequacy of the funding, and that is why the budget assumes a 7% contribution level, because it jumpstarts the reserve pool so that we have adequate reserves for replacement. So that summarizes where we're at with the dollar amount.
Can I toss in just a quick question, mostly for Scott, I guess, although I realize but I look at Casa Paloma 1 with 121,000 gallons in the pool and spa combined. And then Santa Rita Springs with 119,000 gallons in the pool and spa combined. And I would have expected Santa Rita Springs, I mean, that's a big pool. That's one of the major center pools. I don't see how they can be.
Why Casa Paloma is so big?
Yeah.
It's a good question.
I mean, I would expect Santa Rita Springs to come in roughly where Canoa Hills or Las Campanas comes in, roughly 140,000 gallons. So it's puzzling to me.
It's a good question. I think we should look into it.
I'll put a spreadsheet together. I'll have to look
We'll
into
double
it.
check it.
Casa
Yeah.
Paloma 2 is half of what Casa Paloma 1 is.
Sure. Yeah. Which I understand. Casa Paloma 1's a pretty big pool, but is it 120? I think that's worth looking into.
The reason I insert the question here, and I apologize for interrupting, but I look at the projected cost to replace that pool and spa, 1.4 million. That seems low to me, based on what we had to pay to replace east.
Sure.
But anyway, maybe.
Yeah, and
a
that's
second
just
look.
that's just to this year. And again, if, to take your point even further, I mean, would we have to replace that pool with a 120,000 gallon pool, or does it make more sense to replace it with a 66,000 gallon pool? And the
At
latter's
Santa Rita or
at Casa Paloma
Paloma.
one, sure. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, we have the ability to design it any way we want.
Yeah, just 1 foot deep. That would really reduce the cost of replacing the pool.
Just a pond.
Okay. All right.
Okay, sorry.
That's a good question.
Do all pools require what East Center did with like digging out the whole thing, basically starting from scratch?
These are all based on the assumption that we would be starting from scratch. Because at some point, the bowl, the actual shell does decay enough where it warrants replacing the whole thing. Yeah. I mean, we, through regular maintenance, resealing, et cetera, re-stuccoing or plastering, not stuccoing, plastering, we try to extend the life. But yeah, this assumes the replacement.
So the actual, any type of repair of the equipment and that is in your part E. This is pure replacement. So we have, for example, of the 2.3 million, there's about 215,000 that's related to our pools, general maintenance overall. And so that's out of that fund. So as we look at then, if we implemented the same type of funding parameters as we did on the part A, the next chart shows where we would be. So for the fully funded balance, our goal is at or about, our threshold goal at or about 70%. So you can see right now we're at 1.6 million. Our fully funded balance for the next 30 years is 4.7 million. So we're at 33% of our requirement. So again, that's why we put in that 7%, which will help that grow quicker than our part A. If you look at the cost of replacement, again, the cost of replacement is at 13.4 million. We're at 11.6. So we want to be on or about 25%. So the language would say we would gradually increase to make that target, and it looks like we'd reach that contribution or that threshold level in about 2031. So with this acknowledgement, it basically says that in order to build up this fund and acknowledging that the age of our pools, that our funding commitment of 7% is adequate. But it does suggest that if there are additional dollars that could be available at the end of the year or through the emergency fund, if the board wants to look at putting additional dollars into this fund, that would help meet our goal, but that could be a decision that the board could make on an annual basis. But for this time, now that our 7% is what we have forecasted in our next 3 years. So in summary, that brings us back to looking at maintaining the reserves as separate reserves. And I should just know, we did spend time at the Finance FAC meeting talking about this. And one of the reasons to keep them separate is just to get visibility to the fact that our pools are underfunded and it needs to be expedited. But also the expenditure level for our pools is sporadic. So you spend money 1 year and then you don't spend any money for 4 years and then you spend money another year. Our funding for our repairs and maintenance is pretty standard, where we're spending 1.5 to 2 million, 2.3 million every single year. So it's pretty consistent from a repair and maintenance schedule. So we kept them separate at this time. Maybe in the future it could be changed, but for now we think this was our best recommendation. So you can see the recommendations we would be bringing forward. If you look at the language on page 3, page 4, the language there acknowledges what our range would be for the mRNRA fund. You can see the language there with the on or about 25% being our kind of floor or base, and the 70% being a kind of an upper limit. That same language is repeated on page 5. I will be making one friendly amendment to the Finance Committee recommendation and noting that this annual reserve report or study is completed by the staff. And so that it's clear that it's not the Browning study. The other recommendation is on page 6. And the annual reserve study includes definitions that's used in this study. And so we did put the definition of current replacement costs in the CPM requirement. And the last recommendation up there is that the staff completes a report. The last one that the finance or FAC looked at was November 2026, and we would recommend that report be posted on the website, similar to the mRNRA reserve study that's posted. And so that would be very transparent about the age of our pools and the reason why we're basically putting the additional dollars inside there. So that's the recommendations from the Finance Committee on this topic.
Friendly motion or friendly amendment? That was for MMRB. I just want to make sure I have the
Yes,
language
that's B.
correct.
Yeah,
So
that's
was
just on the
that-
B.
Was that after annual reserve study that you wanted that language inserted? Page
Yeah, I would just
5?
I would make up my motion on next week. I would say, instead of study, I would say report completed by staff.
Okay.
So that's just clear that Browning
With the-
completes the A
We'll
and
say
staff
report
completes
completed by staff.
by staff.
Okay, I want to make sure I get that now.
Okay.
All right, great. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Beth?
Excuse me, how does staff determine the condition of the pool?
Yeah.
The condition,
Well, right, I mean, I assume that is it just by their age or that you're talking about the amount of money or is it something else?
I think to be fair, I'd say that this model is based on age.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, but we don't just, well, it's time for you to be dug up and to go out and start digging up the pool. We will look at the condition of the.
Yeah, and we just completed an external analysis of all of the pools, and that's how we came up with, kind of the big concern that there was something going on with Desert Hills. It doesn't look like it has to be replaced, by the way, again. So we've continued to say that. So I'm getting cost estimates now on what does need to be replaced. But yeah, we did that third-party analysis. And then we also have a staff that look at it regularly and, make determinations based on that.
And that was one of the points we think could be added to the report that's posted on the website that last year, this year that did, in calendar year 2024, there was an outside engineering company that looked at the pools and they basically said our pools are in good shape except Desert Hills.
Right.
So I would assume sporadically that engineering company would be brought back in to look at the assessment similar to kind of the on-site review. That's done.
What was the cost of replacing East Center? 1.2, isn't that what?
1.2.
Okay.
And that was 2021 costs.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Correct.
Any other questions on it? Wanna,
No questions from the board members? Jody?
Okay, so right now we barely have enough to cover one pool. Say,
One big pool.
Yeah, one big pool. Say a pool goes down in 6 months and another one 6 months later. Do we have money in the emergency fund to cover a full pool?
We have $500,000 in the emergency fund, and you'd have to look at other areas in order to come up.
You have to
With
convert
it.
it to one of those 1 foot deep pools I was talking about.
Right, right. So that's
Right.
just concerning because we have 7 pools that are past lifespan.
Yeah.
And you know,
If they're good
what's
shape.
the luck of having one pool down and another one going down? I don't think we really have enough money in the reserve and waiting 6 more years to get enough to cover 2 pools. Barely, that's a long time of praying and hoping
Mhm.
we don't have any trouble with the pool.
Well, we're all old, we're pretty good at praying and hoping. I don't know, and the issue, to my mind, the issue you raise is a valid one. But I guess I'm still more inclined to the gradual response rather than, gosh, I don't know, how much would we have to raise dues in order to pump in, let's say, for the sake of argument, you know, $500,000 or even $1 million into that fund in the next 1 or 2 years. I mean, we're talking a big dues increase for that. I don't know.
Or an assessment, which
Or-
you don't really want to get into.
No,
Yeah.
don't do that. I mean, a dues increase
I
is
just
essentially.
I just don't think it's right that I think we're underfunded.
That's why we're
Yeah.
doing this.
Well,
Right.
I understand, but we still have 6 more years to even get for 2 pools.
Sure.
That's a long time to wait, so.
Steve?
So optimistically, we have plenty of money in MR&RA. We have $8 million in that fund. So it's not like we don't have the cash to
Quite right.
work with that type of issue.
If it comes up.
Yeah, that ever came up. Just wanted to add that.
Scott?
I think the other thing is, we just talked about this independent study that was done, and we should have some, some solace in understanding that our pools, for the most part, are pretty good. I think it's very likely that we won't have a bunch of pools going down in the next 6 years. And again, we budgeted 1.6 this year to replace the Desert Hills pool that I'm pretty sure we're not going to have to spend. So hopefully all of that can come out of MRRA anyway. So I think that's all very good news. And as David said, yeah, we realize we're underfunded. The MRRB was put together, I think, in 21.
Not very long.
Not very long. So I think, the board then recognized we need to start putting money away. So I'm thrilled, frankly, that we built it up as much as we have in the shortest amount of time that we have. If we could get some home sales and we could get a surplus,
Yeah.
we could start doing some transfers to MRRB instead of initiatives in the future.
Correct.
And I think that's very possible. I mean, we're coming to the end of some of our very large projects for initiatives. We have to finish West Center, Lapidary, and Wood Shop. Those are really the next 2 big ones. And then after that, we really don't have any big ones. So, future surpluses, and I'm banking that we're going to get some, can be funneled to MRB. In addition to this 6 or 7%.
Thank you.
Bev?
I think that if necessary, obviously the money's there, it's just in different buckets. And so we can move money from MR&RA to MR&RB. That's,
Yeah.
So if there aren't any more questions, is this something maybe that we would want to kick into the consent agenda? Yes, next week, or, yes?
It's up to you guys. We're fine with it, but if you wanna,
Works for me.
That's very good work.
they like consent. Who
I
doesn't?
don't, I don't know if this is a consent
Well-
agenda item. This is significant policy.
Sure. I get it.
And it is my only point. It's not had a review publicly outside of this session
Okay.
here. That would be my question.
Do we have any attendees besides people that are? in the show?
Candidates,
You know?
you're not running.
No, I mean online.
I'm looking, I don't know why I can't Zoom.
Very curious staff is online.
Very curious.
Okay.
Engaged,
There you go.
engaged staff.
Better word.
in a room.
I think I might, although I don't have a problem with it being on consent agenda, I think I might agree with Nellie. It might look like we're not giving full disclosure, maybe. So
That's right.
it might be a good idea to talk about it briefly, not maybe in the detail that we had today, which was wonderful and appreciated, but maybe given the high points.
So are we ready to move on to number 5?
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
Bob and Mike from Browning, you guys have been online. Thank you. And, do you have, are we going down the road in any wrong direction that you can see?
I think you're doing fine. And Nellie's presentation was one of the best we've seen in a long time. So we do a lot of these meetings. So we appreciate that.
Okay.
clarity.
Well, since they're moving on to another part in the agenda, you guys can go back to whatever you were doing.
Appreciate,
We're gonna go
appreciate
eat.
you being here.
We'll
Thank
see you in another month or so.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
All right, review of the draft of the 2025 work plan.
Right, I am pulling it up here. And I've highlighted a few areas that I want to touch on, but I also want to make sure that there's opportunity for anyone in the room to talk as well. And I thought it'd be easiest just to go by the sections that are before us. So under administration / CEO, were there any concerns or questions or thoughts, additions, edits that we have missed? And before I say that, I did want to remind everyone, and I probably should have pulled it up, but recall that all of these annual work plans roll up to support the 5-year strategic plan. You've got a mission and a vision for your strategic plan and 6 goals that have been adopted. Each one of these numbers here, 2.2.3, for example, corresponds with goal 2, which is about services, initiative 2, and I believe it's objective 3 in the strategic plan. And then the bullets here are the annual items that we put together in the work plan that essentially roll up and support and ultimately fulfill the strategic plan. Sure.
I was wondering, and I read this, but it wasn't clear to me. Is this basically what our plan was for 2024 with just some additions, or is this like all new from scratch?
Some of it's new, some of it's from scratch. Some of it has been rolled over for sure. For example, the first one here, this has been here before. Survey similar organizations to make sure we're following trends, best practices and steps. The nice thing, frankly, about getting to the end of the 5-year plan, and this is the 4th of 5 years, a lot of the action items were front loaded into the first few years. So we've accomplished actually quite a bit. You may have noticed this is, I think, 5 or 6 pages instead of 9 or 10 pages. So,
Yeah.
you know, congratulations. We've made some good progress. Same with the next one, 5.11. This is ongoing. You know, we provide updates to our members through different media outlets. I don't think there's anything, frankly, in this section that's new. There's a couple things in boards and committees that I did want to talk about as well, if you're ready to move on or
No,
no.
I have a question.
Okay,
I did too, go ahead.
On 5.2.1, I think you've been doing this, but maybe we want to say, report an update to the board on the annual work plan as part of the CEO performance evaluation in December. I think you've been doing that as part of your monthly report to the board, and that's been very helpful, where you've included your written narrative.
Yeah.
You've talked about the plan. And I
Yeah.
think to continue that, so I would suggest, as well as at the monthly board meetings.
okay. And so this wasn't really at the board meetings, but it was in the monthly report.
It's in your
that I
monthly,
would-
yeah, it was in your monthly
Yeah.
report, and we had a chance to ask a question
Yeah.
if we wanted to. So that was just a really good review of the progress we were making consistently each
Right,
month.
you know, I appreciate you saying that because I wasn't quite sure if that was valuable to everyone or not. So I'm glad to hear that it's very valuable to everyone.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I appreciate you.
Do you have something additional in that area? So,
Go ahead.
is that the end of it?
Well, no, I have another one. It's not here, but as we go into the end of January of 2026, which is this next year, we're starting to look at the development of the new plan, or how we're going to put together that. So do we want to acknowledge that to me, you would almost have to lay out the process for developing the 26 or the 27 plan really needs to start in January through March.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, and I would think we can add something in here to say that.
Yeah.
Or we can,
I didn't know where it fit, if it fit under board.
it
and
should be
committee.
probably under boards and committees, but we've got the annual work plan there. Let's look at boards and committees.
It's actually the new strategic plan.
Yeah. Yeah, we might just want to add a bullet
Yeah.
under admin and CEO so that
Mhm.
it's somewhere.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, we can add something, maybe just a bullet right here that says,
Process for completion or something.
sure. In preparation for next, maybe.
Mhm.
I do know that in the, certainly when we're putting together the 26 annual budget, we will have to earmark some dollars for a facilitator and for the survey that we would do and anything else that we feel we need to budget for. But this is a good placeholder.
Yeah.
Anything else from this one, Kathy?
On the first one, 2.2.3, at the end of the darker print, if we could share, because you're talking about surveys have been ongoing as need arises with respect to dues, fees, policies, practices, and trends. I'd like to add on there and share all results with the board of directors. Because there were some last year that didn't get shared, and if I'm gonna participate in surveys, I'd really like to know what the results are. And there were a couple of them, we didn't get that last year. So if we could just make a note that
Sure.
the results will be shared with the board of directors. That being done, then it's also in the meeting book and members can read it as well.
Okay.
And then one other 5.6.1. The regular attendance at the following clubs. Do you not, I thought you attended the GBR Foundation. Do you not do that?
I do, and I think I just didn't include that.
I would really like to add that one to the list.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then that's all I have for that.
There. Okay, thank you. Good catch.
Thank you.
Anything else from admin CEO? Boards and committees?
I think an add-on to review the committee structure and potential changes to our bylaws if needed.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I think that's been triggered up in the board development committee.
Which number, or should we just find one?
I didn't know I didn't find a number where it fit. So you just create a new one?
We'll just make one up. Yeah, no, we
By
can,
point.
we can do that. All right, and that was, review committee structure.
Mhm. Review of committee structure, and determine any bylaw changes if necessary.
Okay, great. I had highlighted 5.23, which was utilize staff liaison and strategic plans to support continuity of direction. The bullet is staff liaison functions to be facilitated by administration to ensure committee continuity. This is somewhat similar to following the this is about following the strategic plan. And I just wanted to emphasize this, it's ongoing, but that really is what your staff liaisons do for the committees, along with the chair, to work together to make sure that there is that continuity. And I do think maybe this bullet that we just developed, Nellie, needs to go under that because it's really related, but we'll figure that
It
out.
makes no difference.
I'm sorry, what number is that?
5.23 highlighted right here, which is utilizing the liaison and the strategic plan to support continuity of direction. And this is about ensuring committee continuity, and making sure that committees, annual work plans, et cetera, align with the strategic plan. So I was saying maybe the bullet that Nellie just added might fit nicely there,
Yeah.
maybe not, but we can put it there. But I just wanted to emphasize that that's an ongoing thing that's important for liaisons and chairs to make sure they're working together to be consistent. This was action for the board, survey board of directors on what they would like for training, support, teamwork. We've got a new board coming in April. We've talked about maybe surveying the new board and saying, what kind of training are you interested in? We do an orientation, which is a little bit more nuts and bolts of the organization, finance, organizational structure, those kinds of things. If there's any other type of training, in the past, we've done training on teamwork, staying in one's lane, which is always a challenge. I'm always trying to be an elected official. And Robert's Rules of Order, we've had all kinds of training. So for those of you that will be on the board next year, let's be thinking about that. I just wanted to highlight that because we will be surveying you. Anything else from boards and committees? All right, we're humming along.
Alexander and Truro, but there's not a better meeting, I think they're excellent.
They are scheduled for, I think, May, I think is when they usually do it for the online training. We've brought them in several times for other types of trainings, which have been really successful too. Okay, communications. Anything on communications that you wanted to talk about? I had just added this one highlighted thing because I've already mentioned it. We do have the 27 to not 27. Oh my gosh, it is 27 strategic plan. Unbelievable coming up, and we will be doing we anticipate doing a large survey, a random significant survey that would help inform the strategic plan.
I think one of the provisions last year that we had was 3.4.3, which was publicize recreational programs, GBR events, and GBR club events via diverse communication channels. And this was really targeting non-GVR members living in opt-in properties
Mhm.
with recreation market through the annual GVR showcase and direct mailing. And I think to continue that focus.
We've moved that into a different location under finance. And we've talked about, and really because the FAC brought this up yesterday. I've got it right here in blue because it's new. But this is with FAC Member Services Communication, develop a
Okay.
strategy and marketing campaign to attract VDR as voluntary deed restricted properties.
Okay.
So wasn't that, attempted last year? I mean, wasn't there an effort last year that did not?
There
result in
was.
Anything?
We-
I'm just wondering
Yeah,
why not, and whether we could do it differently or better, or.
I think both. We can do it differently
whether
and
it's not
better.
Worth the effort at all?
No, I think it is worth it. We did a big blanket, inexpensive
Mhm.
packet mailing to all the VDR properties. And from what we understand, we didn't get one sign up from that. My sense is it's gonna be an ongoing campaign. And what I've talked with our member services and finance about is keeping track through the title companies of which properties in VDRs, voluntary deed restricted subdivisions, turn over that aren't GVR deed restricted properties. And when one of those properties turns over and it's a new buyer, then we send them the packet. You know, welcome
Right,
to Green Valley.
right.
Did you know that you can join this fantastic organization? And here's all the great things. And here's a couple 2-day passes for you to try out and come to our next showcase and learn all about GVR. So I think it's worth it to continue it. The big blanket one didn't really pay off as we had hoped, but I do think that kind of an ongoing reminder to these to these homeowners might be helpful. And then also FAC is going to talk about some incentives that we might want to look at too, that we've looked at in the past, but might want to revisit.
Scott, I have a sort of a, to my mind anyway, sort of semi-related thing. It's the way that I get the most current information about what's going on at GVR is the e-blast,
Mhm.
you know, which is great, I think. But it's surprising to me in the years that I've been here, running into people who don't get the e-blast or say that they don't, and it brings up my question. Is there a kind of a systematic program for a GVR member just to start getting the e-blast just as soon as GVR knows what his email address is? As opposed to, is it something that they have to actually say, yes, I want to get the
Yeah.
e-blast?
I know exactly what you're saying, that we sign you up for it until you tell us not to.
Yeah, and it's easy to unsubscribe
Sure.
if somebody wants to do that.
No, I think that's a great idea. I don't know the answer to that. I don't think we sign them up automatically.
Okay.
But I think that's really something to look into.
I don't think there would be any legal obstacle to doing
Yeah,
it. I mean,
I don't
you've got
either.
his email address, here's,
Sure.
obviously it's nothing fraudulent, it's not asking
No, not at
for
all.
money. But I do think that if more people got the e-blast, they would find it very useful.
Mark? Andy, sorry.
Candy,
And I really think that, for the people who are not GVR members, I think if you can get them here, if you can get them into any one of our facilities, I think they will want to become a member. I know I would.
Free guest day.
So that, or like, I know there's some events, it's like, register for this event or try to get free tickets for this or that Nick's doing, anything like that. We're doing so many good events now that the word needs to get out. I mean, I agree with Bart, and even more so than just in the e-blast, because if you don't get the e-blast, how do you find out about it, right? I mean, can we put it in the paper? Can we put it on the radio? Can it be like on Neighbor? Can it be like in Facebook things? Just anything that we can just talk up GVR and what's going on at GVR, because there's so many fabulous things going on that I don't understand why anybody would live in Green Valley and not be GVR.
We had dance contest not that long.
Yeah, anyway,
We did.
some squirrely guy.
I heard about it.
Squirrely guy.
Some squirrely little dude won, man. Yeah. I want that jacket.
That was a fancy jacket. It was hard to give that up.
I think a lot of things are posted in the Green Valley News. In the brief section, I see stuff in there all the time. But at the same time, you're not gonna get things on the e-blast out to non-members because they're not on our
Exactly, yeah,
email
exactly.
list. So, they have to know somebody, or like Scott says, give them a 2-day pass. That's, I think, the realtors get a 2-day pass when they're showing property to show what we
Yeah.
have.
Sure.
So, there's no reason why that shouldn't be significant for these people who might be interested in doing it.
I think there's a huge percentage of the people that don't get the paper online. or-
No, well, that's true, 'cause it's too
Well,
expensive.
that could be, that could be.
Yeah,
I agree.
Big Valley paper.
In
Big
the
Valley
long
News,
term, I
yeah.
think I think the best thing that GVR can do is just the minute that some GVR member lets slip what his email address is, then boom, you ought to start getting the e-blast.
But that doesn't include the people that we might want to bring into GVR that are not members already. But it would be helpful.
You did say something about, realtors, sort of a training and maybe, again, a little more, attention or offer free food or something for realtors someday. And again, encourage them even more so to,
You probably meet with
Talk-
realtors, do you meet with the
talk.
realty?
We meet with the association a couple times a year. A lot of the very active, successful realtors don't even show up because they don't need to, frankly.
Right.
I like the idea of feeding them though. They might show
Yeah,
up for
yeah.
that.
Yes,
You can bake.
they all do.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is it mostly the local ones that show up? Because I've heard that some people say, they didn't know about GVR because their dealer was really out of Tucson. And so they're not really familiar with it. And so
Interesting.
even though it's in the paperwork that they signed.
Sure.
They didn't highlight that and take your attention.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So
We,
if you're just getting the local ones, they all know about GVR, but
Yeah.
if they're coming out of Tucson,
then they might not. Yeah, no, that's a good point. We've never met with the Tucson, well, I shouldn't say never. In the last 5 years, we haven't met with the Tucson Realtors
So when you say
Association.
the association, you mean the association?
We meet with the Green
that's
Valley,
local?
Salarita Real Estate Realtors Association. Yeah.
Hmm.
Their office is right at the Continental Plaza, by the way. Reaching realtors and describing the complexities of GVR is always a challenge, but some of them really do get it. But we do try to provide a lot of info. But I think that makes sense. We can always try to improve outreach. All right, facilities. This has been on the list for quite some time. This was about identifying accessibility improvement areas. This has come up a few times. We have had committees in the past, not that long ago, that have gone to all of the centers and identified areas that they think need to be improved. Our project management team has those studies and the results of those committees that have worked really hard on pulling their reports together, and has updated that ADA document on what needs to be done and what their opinions are. And it's not necessarily ADA, it's also just mobility challenges.
That was the reason we
think-
haven't proceeded with that.
No, we have proceeded with it. Yeah, it's pretty much in its final draft form at this point. So we need to take a look at it internally and complete it. And then we anticipate sharing it with the board at some point and talking about it. So that's why we say we'll probably have it wrapped up in April. And then we'll be able to schedule a really nice long work session to really dig in and really understand it.
I think in our last year plan, we did specifically state that a report will be provided to the board once completed in 2025, and we may want to just acknowledge that again here.
What should I say differently?
Ongoing.
It's if
Just
a
do it
report will be
ongoing.
provided to the board once completed.
I should say that right here.
Yeah, that's how it was worded.
Thank you. Okay, great. Energy audits. We've talked a lot about this at the Fiscal Affairs Committee as well. We have this on here. This is a priority. We want to get this done. We might even want to bump up this date here a little bit.
Mhm.
Um,
Could we look at it, at including, the energy audit as well as the lighting compliance audit that's related to the dark sky program?
yeah, we've pretty much, we've
'Cause
we've
we've
made a
been
lot
looking
of
at
good
that.
progress there.
But just acknowledge the lighting compliance. And, I know I don't know if you've been following the newspaper, the last
Yeah.
couple of,
Yeah.
there's 3 articles that John has written. But I think he's met with your staff a while back, so I think there's been progress made on that.
Skis.
Dark sky. Not skis. Carry over.
Is that how you?
That's
Why can't I?
You've been skiing too much yourself.
What's happening? I have, I can't seem to remember how to spell skies.
Sky. SKY, yes, right?
Skies?
SKI.
That's not it.
What?
SKIS. Obvious.
Help me out
Looks
here.
funny.
What's wrong?
That's it.
Skis.
It's not skis.
Skies, that's it, that's it.
SKIS.
All right, thank you. That's what I did the first time.
SKY.
No,
I.
we've got multiple skies.
Right,
There's
right.
many skies.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I read as much of those pieces as I could. There were 3 of them. Down from 5 originally submitted. I'm reliably informed. But it reminded me of an old joke, which is what 7 words are most dreaded by readers of the Washington Post? The answer is First in a Series by Sally Quinn.
Oh, that's funny.
All right.
Move on.
All right.
Scott, on
Yes, ma'am.
on the facilities one,
Yes.
because this is such a big year for the MRNRA being at the 2.3 million. Is there a plan that's been developed within facilities department to basically manage that plan? 'Cause, I mean, I've seen it in FAC and it's just basically kind of the 1/12. And I don't probably think that's what's actually going to be, what actually is going to be happening, but so.
They
it's-
pretty much
is there
use
some way-
they use like a Gantt chart to keep track of all of their projects.
Just some type of summary that we can get this progressing.
It's progressing.
Oh, but so that you think you're gonna be at 70% of spending, it's just such a big jump from 2.3 million from what we have been spending. And to say at the middle of the year, report on the progress of the
Yeah, I
of
understand.
the MRNR facilities plan.
David, you can take that one.
Thank you.
All right.
The rest of that
sentence
is,
thank you, sir. May I have another?
Yeah.
All right.
And the fun continues.
We're doing this now for initiatives, but initiatives is, this big.
Yeah.
MRR is huge, so, they've already got it. We just need to find a way to kind of boil it down and synthesize it so that you don't need to be a project manager to read it.
Understandable.
So we will work with them on
I
that.
would like to address 1.2.3,
Okay?
copy the major center lobby.
Yes.
I'd like to nominate Santa Rita Springs because in the Glass Art Studio, we have no access to food or coffee or anything. We're not even allowed to eat in the studio. We'd like a food truck or something,
Really?
or maybe a branch of,
Okay.
of the 1989 new towns of middle.
Yeah, have them, they're gonna expand.
They're in between Glass Arts and the pool, there's a
Have
big
them,
old empty space.
Sure.
Mhm.
No, I get it. You know, we can
I think that's a good
put
idea.
that down as a possibility. Santa Rita Springs is so challenging because there isn't one central
There's
lobby.
not a lot of, yeah.
You're coming in from all kinds of places and, so we'll have to look into figuring out where we can do that. I mean, we could
Truck is
put,
good.
you know, a food truck.
That sounds good. There's a
Well, it
parking
does.
lot.
We just have to get them to agree to it.
I have another sort
Guarantee
of
business.
more serious request. If you're late, you have to park in the back parking lot or upstairs and go down the elevator, which is also an option. But if you park in the back parking lots, there's no easy way to get to the glass studio. You have to cut through the pool, go through two gates. After you pull in a lot, which glass people always are
Mhm.
carrying a lot. But there's a whole like gravel path or sand path from the back parking lot that goes up almost to their door. We could get sidewalk from there and make a shortcut. It'd be awesome.
Well, I have a suggestion. Don't be late.
Yeah, there are sidewalks there from every parking place
There's-
to,
Parking lots all over.
Not from the back one. There's not, a back. I mean, you can either go around a building or you can cut through the pool area. There's no parking lot from the back parking lot to the glass.
I mean, I go there every day. When you say back parking lot, do you mean the lower parking lot or the upper parking?
Lower.
Well, there's a sidewalk that goes right beside, between the pool and the workout room
Yeah.
that takes you pretty much straight to
And you
Glass
have
Arts.
your two gates and you're carrying a cart and your other hand's probably full of something else. Heavy glass. And it's difficult.
If you don't go through those gates, you go through the parking lot.
And if
Yeah,
go
you
through
could
the
just
parking-
circle around that
if you
building.
go- Then if you don't go through those gates, you have to go clear around the whole building. And that's even worse.
I made a note. We'll have a look at it for sure. And see what options there are.
So like from the handicap spots in the back parking lot, basically from there's a gravel path and it looks like they use it, maintenance probably uses it for carts for landscaping or something. And it might be unaffordable to put a park or sidewalk from there to the Anza building.
Mhm.
And it wouldn't be just for Glass Arts because there's several other clubs in that building that would.
Sure.
I don't even know where you put it.
We will have to hold a bake sale to pay for that. No, we'll look into it. We'll look into it.
There's a bunch of clubs that would benefit from it, not just.
I did just want to highlight this because I know there was some backlash against eliminating coffee for certain activities and clubs and that kind of thing. And we did talk about internally about how it's certainly nice, and I think it would actually be used more if it was not coffee just created for a specific event, but if we had an urn in the lobby, if there is a lobby, where anybody could come and grab some coffee if they wanted. So we thought we would at least try it out. Part of the challenge before was we ended up just throwing so much away.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't worth it. So if people are actually going to drink it, then, that's a nice.
Could give out
perk.
insulated mugs and they can bring their own. Like I'm doing here.
I know, we have done a lot of different things like for branding and campaigns to promote GVR. So we could do that again.
I mean, for about 60 years, have been excellent coffee machines. And the beauty of a coffee machine is that number one, you have to put some money in it, a little bit of money, relatively speaking. So there's not a lot of waste of the coffee. And it makes it by the cup.
Yeah.
And you
Oh,
make
you're
some money
talking
from
like
it
Keurig?
if a lot of people buy it.
Are you talking like Keurig?
Well,
No,
there's
I'm
all
talking
kinds
about
of,
the machine.
there's just all kinds of vending machines.
Oh, you mean make it by the cup
Many of
then? You mean like, I don't know, that make it by the cup.
How do you think a coffee machine works? You stick a quarter in there back in my day.
Oh, you mean like a big,
Yeah, I'm just,
Vending machine, yes.
oh, a vending.
I'm just gonna put a parentheses here that exploration could also include a vending
In
machine.
hotel lobbies, to go along with their breakfast, many of them have coffee machines that you don't put a quarter in or $1,
That's
whatever.
cool.
And you just hit a button to pick which kind of coffee you want to get coffee with. And
Yeah, I mean,
sometimes
can
the
do that
coffee isn't
too.
Too bad.
you can do that too. Well, we were looking at
We're
different
talking about the
options for the,
hospitality business. We're really not.
when we were looking at maybe having to use vending machines at the clubhouse, we did talk to a couple vendors. And there are definitely the options where you can put money in, you can slide a credit card, or GVR can just pay for it. I know, well, I hear you. We were paying 10,000 a year for coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of money. Okay, are we ready to move on to finance? Oh, Kathy, sorry,
My arm's
Kathy.
getting really,
Sorry,
really tired. I also had a question with regards to that, because one of my concerns would be, how many major centers are you talking about? Because do we not take away from the social center that we just developed? I have a concern about that. And if you want to go to the coffee thing, what you were just discussing, being with the singles group, we get 85 people. They're not going to stand in line to booth one cup of coffee at a time. We're only there for an hour and a half, maybe a little bit more, maybe an hour and 3/4. But it's a convenience too. I mean, what else does the singles club or a club like that get? Nothing. And if somebody had come to us and said, we're throwing out too much of your coffee. Now, mind you, I watched an employee bring out 2 pots of coffee when everybody was getting up and leaving. There's a certain amount of common sense that goes along. But if somebody had come to the singles and said, we're throwing out too much coffee, what can we do to reduce that? They would have been more than happy. I mean, we know that at this time, we get 85 to 100 people on a Monday morning. Last Monday was a holiday, so we had 65. But on the other 6 months of the year, we get between 45 and 60. So we know that we can adjust that way. Again, it's a common sense thing. We can work with people if they'll work with us. It's, I was not aware that a bunch of coffee was made for all of the HOAs that were coming in. My thought would be, if those are afternoon meetings, they're not going to drink coffee because it keeps them up at night. I wouldn't do it. But I wasn't aware that that was taking place. I think if more of us knew what the issues were, we could work around it.
Sure. Anyone that could request it, it was open to anybody that said, hey, do you want coffee or tea or water? Yes, then we would provide it. Regardless of the time, we didn't, say, well, we're not serving in the afternoon. I don't personally think it's going to take away from the Del Sol Clubhouse. We've got 23,000 members. There's not that much square footage in the clubhouse. I think you're going to get people that just want to sit in a lobby and have a conversation with someone and maybe talk over a cup of coffee. But that's also the reason we said, let's do a pilot. I mean, I'd be really surprised if we saw a decrease in patronage at the clubhouse at this point, just because we added coffee at Canoa Hills, for example. I could be wrong. But this was kind of a solution that we thought we would offer.
We're gonna add coffee, do it further away.
Yeah.
It's in Canoa Hills.
In Canoa Hills?
Yeah, don't just across the street.
Yeah.
We went out there Valentine dinner, which was
Oh.
wonderful, and I don't remember if it was that morning or maybe the day before. He said the line was out the door for breakfast.
It's been very popular.
I've been there
It's a crowded
several,
parking
well,
lot.
3 times
Ben?
to pick up a cinnamon roll, and
What?
it's been a good
What?
crowd.
To the clubhouse
To
buy a cinnamon.
just so you know, I'm working, I've applied for a line of credit,
Oh, God, yeah.
but it's not lined up yet.
All right, well,
Good question on the pilot program.
yeah.
Are you thinking about doing it on certain days?
I don't think we've gotten that far.
Oh, okay.
This is in the work plan, so we're just starting it. This is
Sorry.
fresh.
Too much detail, sorry.
I don't know. I think it would probably depend on which days are the busiest at the centers. We would try it out. Major centers, probably Las Campanas makes good sense. East Center is very popular. Canoa Hills was popular, but I get it. Desert Hills, that's pretty close.
Snow Hills is the nicest lobby. we've got, I
It does
think,
have a
pretty
nice
much.
lot.
It does, absolutely. And it really served as, as our Del Sol clubhouse. Remember when we had to close the clubhouse last year, which was unfortunate. But, you know, this is a pilot. I think we just try it on for size, see how it works. And if we had the pot and the urns out there, we wouldn't have a line of singles pushing the button.
Right.
At least our idea was just come pour some coffee or whatever we do.
But also the time of year, Scott, because if you do it during the summer when half our people are
Yeah.
gone, you're not gonna get a good reading.
Yeah, I don't think
But we would
August
need less coffee.
is necessarily the best time to do
A
it.
good reading.
Only 5,000.
So,
All right.
All right,
All right.
moving right
all
along.
right, the
Okay.
coffee discussions have derailed our movement.
Just need some coffee.
20, are we?
Yeah, let's just say that.
Now I gotta go to water. Almost
See you,
there.
right?
Okay.
Caught up with you.
In the finance department, we've got an item to look at revenue diversification, brainstorming on different ideas to raise funds. So I just wanted to point this out because this is consistent with something the FAC is doing. We've already talked about the blue one, which is a new item. It's not a new item, but I've moved it to a different section on marketing to the VDR properties. There was a discussion too about getting our invoices out earlier so that we could receive receipts from dues sooner. Part of the problem is our software isn't the best. So we are, and we started this anyway, we're really trying to upgrade our system. We have two different softwares, well, three. We've got a finance software, and then we've got a membership software, and then we've got another software to use to sign up for a class. And they don't talk to each other very well, and it's very complicated. And I think it'd be a miracle if we could find an off-the-shelf solution, but we are going to be looking at some demos. One of the things that we would really like to do is finding more electronic options so that we don't have to put out paper statements unless people want paper statements. The same as, you know, paying your mortgage or your car loan or your credit card. Do you want paper or do you not want paper? And right now we have the capability, but it's a little clunky, frankly. So we're looking at different options to make it a more streamlined process. So that's the reason I highlighted that. Anything else in finance?
In our last year's plan, we had two items that are not in this year's plan. One was the 1.14 develop and adopt a rolling 5-year capital projects plan aligned with the strategic plan.
Yeah,
And I think that's an important one.
because we've done it.
But you're gonna do it again
Yeah, I know.
going forward.
Again,
I
to
mean,
kind of,
that's kind of.
I can add it, but yeah, it's up to you all, certainly. We took a lot of the ongoing things because now we have it systematized. It's part of the process. We feel like we've succeeded. We checked it, we did it. Doesn't mean we're going to stop it. So I can put it on here again.
Yeah.
But just because it's not on here doesn't mean we're going to change our process.
And then the other
So
one
what's
was
your preference?
4.2.1. This is evaluating the MR&R, this A to confirm the need. This is the big study where they come, this is the year that they come on site. And I think to acknowledge that, I think that's I don't know how much work there is when they do come on site to complete the review, but I think to acknowledge that that's a different workload this year than it is in prior years.
Yeah, why not? I haven't had one.
It is, you know, I will say the same thing. I can add it. I don't think it's needed. But just because it's already systematized, we've already got the systems in place. We don't have to do anything different with our action plan, but I can add them. Can you give me those numbers again and I'll just make sure they're added.
1.14,
1.14,
1.14 and 4.21.
oh, crank. 1 point, say this,
1.14 and 4.2.1.
4. Is it 0.4?
One, yes, right.
And 2 point,
4.2.1.
oh, good,
For 4.2.
4.2.1.
good heavens. Yeah, that's the only reason. It doesn't
Okay.
mean that we're changing our systems, but to acknowledge it,
Yeah.
sure, we can add it back. HR, so this has come up a lot, and I think we need to talk about this. This was to develop a sustainable volunteer program, recruiting, training volunteers to support GVR activities. The volunteer program that we have now really supports our performance function. I've heard for a while now that some people miss the volunteers at pools and at fitness centers. They were the monitors. There were a lot of them, and we had a full-time staff to schedule all of those volunteers. All of those volunteers needed T-shirts. They all got luncheons to show how much we appreciated them. Some of them were great. Some of them, we got a lot of complaints. This was before me about how some of them were really heavy-handed about swipe your badge, you know,
Where's the shower requirement?
and to some degree, I think this was again before me. I think part of this was before we had a better system on booping in. I could be wrong, that's what we called it. So we're able to keep track when people actually do that, but we've moved a lot of our swipes to the actual doors so that you don't go in and then swipe. You have to actually swipe to get in the door, which has been somewhat inconvenient for some, but we feel our numbers are more accurate. So, this is a big lift, and I guess I wanted to, really find out if this is something that you're even still interested in and really talk about kind of why.
Right.
I'll start off. You know, I've said for a number of years, and I'll say it again, that our biggest unused resource in GVR is the volunteers, the volunteerism of GVR members. You're never going to get a pool of perfect volunteers, but it's nice, just as somebody who uses the workout room every day, it would be handy to have a volunteer there during the busiest times of the day. If nothing else, to very gently remind people that, yes, you should swipe in. And if it's people who are there who haven't swiped in, very often the reason is that they don't have anything to swipe. So, I realize it's a pain in the neck, but I think it would be a pain in the neck that overall would repay more than its cost. So, with having said that, Beth?
Well, again, I agree with you that there's an untapped resource, but again, I feel like, what are the jobs that you really would like to be done? And how, and how much, how useful is it for these jobs to be done? As opposed to, we should let people volunteer because they like to volunteer. I mean, it used to be that somebody was just sitting there for long, like in front of the pool for, a long period of time, doing basically nothing. And, said hello and, but I didn't see it as a particularly useful role. That's all I'm saying, is if we find roles like in the events, you have a role, like you sell tickets or you show people to their seats, or you tell them where the bathroom is, or something that, you feel like you're actively doing something. That's my point, is having somebody sit there, maybe wandering, if they're at the, and wandering around the exercise, maybe you're right, maybe they feel like they're actually doing something and saying, okay, you've been on that for the last 4 hours, so maybe it's someone else's turn. I don't know.
Move it along.
Yeah, removing the corpses from the machine.
I think we underestimate the amount of volunteerism that we have in GVR. And that is the amount of volunteerism there is through our clubs.
Yeah.
And when they come
That's
and,
true.
when they come and talk about what they do, how many workshops they're putting on, that's pure volunteer.
Right, that's true.
And our members are getting a benefit from it. So I agree with you. It's kind of the reason why someone would volunteer. Well, they would because on the performance, they get to actually see their performance for free.
Right.
You know, as a
In addition
volunteer
to-
versus
right.
kind of sitting out. So I guess I'm not real supportive of adding us. And if you're going to do a volunteer program, then you're going to have to put a staff person on and you need to do it right. Where you've got the recognition, you've got the scheduling, and I don't know if there's enough payback to it for the types of jobs that if you're looking to have a fitness monitor, or it was really the pool monitor for showering, and you don't have that requirement anymore. It's now you don't need to have a person there. It's just a person that sits there. So I mean, that's just my thought. But we have a lot of volunteerism. I think we really have to acknowledge to our clubs.
Yeah.
Additionally, in Green Valley and the surrounding areas, I think this last year, Green Valley News had a listing of all of the organizations that needed volunteers. And they were in the paper and I counted them, there were 102. And I think the year before that, they did things that were in just the Green Valley area that needed volunteers, and I think I counted 61 at that time. If you're gonna go for volunteers, I think Beth is right, you need to tell them what jobs you need, and you can do that in the e-blast. We're recruiting volunteers to do this type of job, we really need your help. But Nellie is right also, we have volunteers in every club. And it's hard to get those volunteers too, just to be on your board of directors for that club. This
Or
morning.
monitors into club
Right.
space.
And there's two articles in the paper this morning, well, not article, well, there was one article for Ollie. They are not able to get volunteers for their organization in the Green Valley area, and they may have to cut that. They're doing okay in the Tucson area, not so much in Green Valley, so they may have to cut that. Another one was a letter to the editor by Joyce Finkelstein. She's in charge of the whole clearinghouse for volunteers. And they're always desperately in need of volunteers. So I understand that we probably need some more volunteers, but so does everybody else. And we can't say that we're not recruiting them because everybody is recruiting. And it's a difficult job to do. I hate to see a tremendous amount of money put out to that when we probably, as Beth said, probably should be going after specific jobs that we need these people in, if we need them. I do remember back in the day when I first started coming to GVR and volunteering, a lot of us didn't stay as a volunteer because of the abuse from the members, not so much. I heard you say.
It went
that
both ways.
it went
Yeah.
both
No, it really did.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, sometimes we cause our own problems. I'm not sure. I think whatever you have here,
Yeah.
where we're looking
Yes.
for things to do is a good way of putting it. But like I said, if we need to have certain specific volunteers, then I think that's what we should advertise for. And we could do that easily in the e-blast. Hey, guys, we need your help. In these specific areas, can you help us out and see what kind of a response we get from that? But I don't know that I've put much effort into anything else, but so many organizations needing volunteers, and it's gonna get worse.
That's for sure. Money's not gonna be there.
My question.
Diane has a question too.
Diane.
Way back, I worked a lot with Maureen when she was here, heading the volunteers. And I think we had more trouble with members being heavy-handed with the volunteers.
That's
than
what
the
she
other
was
way around.
saying,
I
yeah.
I remember one that had some difficulty like that.
Interesting.
I go to Las Campanas Fitness Center, and we could sure use somebody there. This man jogging backwards on the treadmill. And just all kinds of
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
I know somebody that does.
Well, I'm gonna
that.
try
It's
that.
good.
I don't want to try it.
To help somebody, if you could tell them doing something really wrong, nicely. And, I think it's be a good thing, you know, the children running in swimming pools and, tackling them.
I just said no.
I think there's a couple things. Volunteers aren't necessarily trained on how to use equipment. They're not necessarily
Right.
fitness instructors, so
They used to be. But
they might have been.
likely.
So I would be a little concerned about liability with that and risk. And then I'm not a labor attorney, but I think there are some questions and some things that have changed over the years that we would need to look into about if you're going to schedule your volunteer at this time and, you know, are they replacing an employee? Well, not necessarily in this case, but
What if they were?
well, if they were, I think the IRS might say
Yeah.
you have to pay them.
Yeah.
No, if you're, let me throw out some tasks that have occurred to me. Filling up the soap dispensers in the showers, which GVR staff is very capable, but there are often periods of days in which there aren't.
Are we gonna
You know.
get volunteers to do that?
Why not? I would do it.
Would
It's a
you?
custodial
absolutely.
position. We have
I've got
custodians.
custodian, I mean, if you wanna,
They're not filling up the soap dispenser.
Well, then
Well, they're
volunteer,
supposed to.
Bart.
What the issue?
they're supposed to for sure. Yeah, if they're not, that's a different issue.
Maybe really instructing them how to use the.
But if you're saying that it would be in some way unlawful for a
Well-
volunteer to put soap in a soap dispenser, I don't think there's any evidence to support that.
I'm not an attorney, I just want everyone to know that. And you're not a labor attorney,
Actually, I
but
was.
if you really want us to explore that, we can. And I think we should. I think we really should say, yes, can we do this or not? But again, is that what you want volunteers for? So we're gonna have volunteers, you know, putting in soap in the soap dispensers, pulling weeds?
No.
No,
Why,
no,
why not?
Washing toilets.
no, no.
I don't-
Why not?
Are they gonna do it? I don't know.
With their hands.
Who's gonna do that?
They're not gonna volunteer
Who's
for
gonna
a paid
do that?
position if they're not getting paid.
Volunteers volunteer for a lot of paid positions. I mean, that's volunteerism in a nutshell, is doing something for nothing that you might be able to get something for.
That has personal value.
Yeah.
Right.
And filling up a soap container, cleaning bathrooms.
Are
does
you
not.
kidding? What greater, more charitable act could you engage in?
Okay, it's all yours next week, let's see.
Yeah, you
Okay.
volunteer for it, because I'll tell you what, we've talked about this, I think, as a group before, Scott. There are many items that are not bolted down that people steal.
Sure.
And one of the things that they could be doing, I'm not saying they are, is that they could be taking that liquid soap and putting it in their own container to take home.
Oh, they do that.
Yeah, they do.
That happens. That's probably why they're empty.
Right, I think that's.
I'm sorry,
That
I
doesn't surprise me.
disagree,
Oh, well.
trying to get people to do a paid job position. I don't think that's the right definition
I
of a
think it's a
volunteer.
very interesting subject that needs, to be pursued more, but, again, I think people would like to do it if it's something that seems valuable and there's some reward involved in doing it. And
And they get
I'm not
appreciated.
sure how many
Right,
jobs we
right.
have and how much effort the staff and Scott should put into developing a whole system in order to make it work and make some people feel like they're doing good by volunteering. And like you say, there's hundreds of places anywhere, any place you can volunteer.
Right.
I don't know. I think it's an interesting subject, but I'm not, it's sure we're getting too far.
All right, let's
Where
go.
should we go?
Let's go.
Put it on the thing. We'll be discussed at future.
So we're
meetings.
now at the bottom of page 24. Oh, son of a gun, it's blank. So,
Now, recreation.
I've got member services. I just highlighted this because we've got the Board Affairs Committee. We're gonna be looking at, this is related, it's not exactly it, but we're looking at guest card misuse
Right, that's a big.
Yeah.
That's coming up for the
March meeting of
the March
BAC.
BAC, and I expect it will be an ongoing discussion
Sure.
and something with the next BAC meeting. And then this highlights just the same as what we had before. This just says C finance, but this is about the VDR subdivisions. And then recreation, what do we have down here? That's it.
Can I ask one
Yeah.
one
Sure.
question on the member, on
Mhm.
3.3.1?
Okay.
What do we do with Fairfield and like the Solterra marketing office that is GVR? Do we have a member packet or a GVR information sheet that's given out to people as they come in and look at that development?
We have the same packet that we give out to all potential members. It's not one just for Solterra or
No, but
Fairfield.
I'm still looking at a potential member that's going over to Solterra.
Okay.
You know, what they're doing is they're shopping Quail Creek and they're shopping, they're going
Okay.
to Solterra.
Yeah.
And so in the marketing office, they've got, I haven't been there for a while, brochures. And I'm just wondering what we could put there
Where?
in the ask Fairfield to have something.
At Fairfield or
Yeah.
at Solterra. I see what you're
Yes, what
saying.
I'm saying, in
You mean
their,
their
in their
model?
office.
Oh, and they're
No, in their,
okay,
they
their
they
office.
hand out materials when you
Okay.
go in there. They've got materials there, so, and they're GVR.
The volunteer
They are-
member.
No, they're not volunteer.
No, they're not a volunteer.
No, I mean, I'm
It's just
saying
marketing the
It's
new
one of
people
us
as they're
that needs to
shopping.
sell it to.
I gotcha.
You're handing out an information sheet,
Yeah.
or then.
I think we could look into that. I will say, and this is probably related, but a little bit different. We've done that at the Chamber of Commerce as well.
Mhm.
We've handed it out to the realtors. We've done so many things. We can't print enough, just so you know, which is a good problem, but it's also a really expensive problem. So we've tried to find ways where we can direct people to our website or to some specific thing, because the packets, we have realtors that will just take it all. We'll put it in, again at the chamber, and it's gone within a couple days. So we're having to put it in again. And we don't know if it's in the back of somebody's trunk or what. We have no
Maybe
idea.
Maybe it's just that one pager, which basically said, this is
Yeah.
GVR, go to the website. You
Yeah,
know,
sure.
that hits the main points or.
Yeah,
or
with one of
stop
those
in,
barcode type.
barcode,
Sure.
QR code or something.
Oh,
Gotta
I'm
confuse.
not sure how this would work,
Yeah.
but going back to the volunteers, and maybe there are
Scared to death.
people who might be, if someone was a prospective buyer, maybe a volunteer could offer to show them around, like the realtor would say, well, there's this person who would be happy to take you for for 2 hours or an hour and show you the facilities.
I got the
Maybe
phone number.
Volunteer, people might volunteer to do that. That's just.
I think it's a
throwing it out.
great
Oh,
idea.
that could be, yeah.
All right.
There's a lot of sales that happen out in your front office, the AO office,
Yeah?
where people, yes, when people come in and want to know about GVR.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which again is, we're gonna talk about this next week, but we're wanting to combine all of that up here so that
Yeah.
it kind of sells itself a lot better than
Yeah.
that little dark office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Okay.
we're on to member comments that we haven't heard already. Any member comments?
I'm sorry, I do have a question in the recreation department on page 23.
Oh.
1.2.5 at the bottom of the page there. You have an identification here, secure beer and wine licenses for identified locations. Have you thought of specific locations?
Yeah, specifically, we've looked at West Center for performances.
Okay,
That seems, that's probably the biggest one is, we have a lot of performances here and a lot of people would be interested in beer, wine.
Yes.
do we
Sure,
have,
that's true.
do we have to do separate licenses for separate locations?
I don't know enough
Okay.
to know
okay.
that, but I know that we have staff that do know that.
Okay.
I just don't. It's
I-
really complicated.
Yeah, I thought it might be, that's why I wanted to
That
ask.
might
the
be a
question.
good,
I'm done. Thank you.
way to make
Okay,
some money.
we don't have any
Oh,
online
yeah,
comments?
absolutely.
I-
No online
Before
comments?
we close, I'm sorry, just take 1 second.
Okay.
Okay. The forum is tomorrow at 4 o'clock. I'm gonna be here at 3 to make sure everything is set up since
You need
Nancy's out of
volunteers?
town. Absolutely. I need as many volunteers in this room as we can have because we would
What an
like to
opportunity.
support. it would help to have as many board members because we're gonna introduce the board members who are there. And the candidates, most of them, all of them are here, were here. They need your support as well, and so does our committee. So please, if you can spare any time at all to come, I appreciate it.
No,
It's gonna be in the
auditorium.
auditorium.
Yeah.
And then we have another one next Tuesday.
All right, thanks.
you were in business or what?
And you know I volunteered. on
Selling my
that.
soul.
I would entertain a
I
motion to
know.
adjourn.
3 more years.
Second?
I noticed you
I'll
didn't
move
re-up.
it. Second, all in favor?
Bye.
Bye. Thank
Who
you.
did the first?
I did. I made a
Guys,
motion.
please come and support
No, Joe seconded.
your candidates. Their speeches are on the website and they're good. They're all
It's good to
good
be seen.
candidates.
Boy, you're off.
The interviews are on there.
Yeah.